Hello, my name is Sandy Spieler, and it's rather odd to be meeting you this way on a screen because usually I like to meet people in person. But I like making things and I like helping people to make things. And so I have a friend named Catherine who said, Sandy, I would like to have my neighborhood do some beautiful, joyful things in the early spring. Will you help by teaching how to make something that might be fun? So I went, well, sure. And then I was like, really? What? What can I make? And I made some ideas of things that were very complicated. And then yesterday, which happened to be Easter Sunday, it snowed and snowed and snowed. And I thought about what was I missing? I was missing the day before when I could hear all the birds starting to come back. I thought, all right, what about if we did something where we can welcome back the birds after winter? Because those of us that live in the northern part of the world, no matter how much we love winter, when you start hearing those birds singing, it's a gift. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And in recent years, there's been news on the radio and the papers about how some of the birds are having trouble because of various things that humans are doing, taking over too much of the earth so that the birds don't have places to live, or covering the earth with poison so that the birds get sick. And so maybe it's really good for us to think into our little birds and how much joy they bring. And those of us who live in the winter, yeah, winter sometimes is in our bodies as well. How we can kind of listen into the quiet times, and then sometimes we just want to be able to come out in the spring and do a little dance like the birds, or sing, or make a new nest, or fly. So, okay, Catherine, let's make birds, and specifically, let's make some robins and see what we can do to make the robins dance and move. And we can become robins by wearing a mask and a costume. And then when we're inside that space, we can think about what it might be like to be a robin. So, okay, here's the assignment. First of all, we start with a little bit of research. Robins. All right, maybe we recognize robins that have those orange, red breasts, and they have a song that sounds like this. Can you hear that? The best is to go outside and to listen for it. But then I want you to find some good pictures of robins. Maybe in a book. Maybe you'll find a book that has a good picture. Maybe you have some beautiful bird books. Maybe you have some that are drawn, or maybe you like to use the computer. You can go online and you can look up robin and learn a lot about robins. Where do they live? Where do they live when they're not here in the summer and the spring? Some of them stay here. Do they travel away? What do they eat? What do their nests look like? What do their eggs look like? Such a beautiful color. Even sometimes they name paint. Robin's egg paint. What color is it? I want you to find out. I want you also to go to a site, maybe the Audubon site, that talks about things we can do for the robins. Like where do they live, and how is their living being imperiled by the human world? And what is it that we can do? So I want you to research that. And then I want you to go, okay, let's make some robins. First thing that you want to do is to know where you're going to do your work. Maybe you don't have a good messy space like I do to be able to work in. I often work in my dining room. Sometimes I work on the floor. Sometimes I work outside. I work many, many different places. So when you set up your space, you want to gather your tools together, which I'm going to show you. And you're going to gather a lot of paper, cardboard and paper. And so of course I just want to start by saying all this cardboard that we're going to use and this paper, what is it made out of? Do you know? Yes, trees. It's made from the trees. And how did the trees grow? Now I'm looking outside. I'm looking at the clouds. I'm thinking about the rain that falls into the soil. I'm thinking about the seeds in there, and I'm thinking about the sun that makes those seeds grow when the water comes. And I'm thinking about how big the trees are and how they give us air and breath and paper. And so whenever I'm using this paper, I'm saying thank you to the trees. Thank you to the water that falls. Thank you to the sun that shines. And thank you to my hands, my body that's like a tree that grows. Thank you. Okay, once you've said your thanks, then you can start. Okay, find a table or just a working space. We're going to use cardboard mostly. And I want to tell you a little bit about cardboard because you might hear me say use single ply cardboard. What does that mean? Cardboard, isn't all cardboard the same? If you take cardboard and you look at it really carefully. Do you see how it has kind of lines in it? And they run like this. If you hold it like this, they run like this. At the end of it, when you look at that, you can see one layer, or we say one ply. This kind of cardboard is bendy. You can work with it pretty easily, which is why I'm going to say we're going to use it. Other cardboard, like this cardboard, see how much stronger? I could almost stand on this cardboard. This is double ply. If you look at it, it has 2 layers. You can even have 3 ply, or wait a minute. Yeah, this is 3 ply. Can you see that? This is super strong. Oh my goodness, this is so strong. Make a drum from that. All right, so we want some single ply cardboard. The cardboard that I found for this that we're going to be using, which I have here, guess where I found this? I found it in my alley when I was walking my dog yesterday. Maybe you'll meet Molly, my dog. She comes in every now and then. But this particular cardboard, most people would say, oh, I'm throwing it out or recycling it. But look at this one. It's so soft. So it's not good for everything, but for making puppets, it can be really good. So that's the cardboard I have. Then we're going to have brown paper bags. You'll just need one, unless you're going to make one for each bird that you make, and newspapers. Okay, and you're going to need some tools. I have a box here so that you can see what tools to pull together. Tape, masking tape. You don't need this much, but make sure that you can pull it off easily. I have some that's really old. This, I like to use it, but it's hard. Okay, a knife with a blade in it. Depending how old you are, please ask an adult. This can really hurt you. You have to be very, very, very careful. a scissors, do you know what this is? This is, let's see, I should be doing it like this. Specialty tool. This is a stapler. Another kind of stapler can work too, but this is like, ooh, that's a great tool. You might need some white glue if you don't have a stapler like that. Don't despair. You can do this project anyway. You might need a ruler, maybe. Almost always need a pencil for some moment. And that's all you need to get started. I bet you have almost all of this, except for maybe a stapler in your house. All right, so take a minute and get all of that together. Okay, I'm going to show you how to make the paste for paper-macheing. And as many things do, we begin with the water. So take a kettle and fill it up. And of course, as this water is running, you know what I'm doing. I'm saying thank you to the water. In fact, I have a little blue ribbon here on my faucet, which helps me remember to say thank you every time I use the water. Filling it up. Fill it with more than you think you're going to need, because if you suddenly need more, you won't have it. Because it has to boil. It has to boil really hard and hot. So put it on the fire. Thank you, fire. And we're just going to let that cook for a while. Okay, in the meantime, we're going to mix up the paste. And the kind of paste we use is cornstarch. And yes, you're right, cornstarch, there's some corn on it because it's actually made from corn. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say thank you to the rain that falls, the sun that shines onto the seed that's in the soil that grows up into the plant of corn. Thank you, cornstarch. I've never actually measured how much I use, but just for you, I'm using 1 cup. Okay. 1 cup so that we can figure out the amounts for you. You're going to do it more by how it feels, but just to give you some idea, right? Okay. Here we go. Cornstarch is this wonderful, feel it. It's very soft, but it has a little something. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. If any of you are word people or poets, write a poem about the cornstarch and the magic tricks that happen in making the paste. So now we're going to take some water. Again, this is not the hot water. This is cold, cold water. And fill it up. This right here is 1/2 cup, but don't just pour it in, because I don't actually know how much to use. I'm going to add a tiny bit at a time. All right, that's about maybe 1/8 of a cup, and I'm going to start mixing it. I like to use my hands because then I can feel what it's supposed to be like. And you go, oh, no way, that's not going to get pasty. And you're right, we need more water. But still, only add a wee bit. Okay, that's about another 1/16 of a cup. And now, it's kind of hard. Okay, we need more. I'm curious what the measurements are, actually. then I can teach people easier. All right, this is getting pretty close actually. It's not quite a full half of a cup yet, but it's very, it's not really stiff, but it's thick, but it's thick in a different way than anything else that I know when I stir. When you go like this, you can start seeing it being like paste. Can you see that? Okay, I'm going to add the teeniest, tiniest little drops more. And teeniest, tiniest drops more. Okay, so it is like half a cup with 1 cup of cornstarch. Now, I'm afraid of adding too much water because the first time I made it was from a really big group of people, and I made a huge vat, and I'd never made it before. The person who was showing me said, "Oh yeah, that's good, that's good." It's this huge vat, and once I poured the hot water in, it didn't set up, it didn't set up, it didn't set up. And I wasted a whole big, like, 5 gallons of it. So after that point, I always do it by how it feels and very cautiously. But at this point, this is good. You can see how can you see it's sticky? It's like thin yogurt, maybe. All right, now I'm just gonna set this aside so that I'm waiting for the hot water. All right, I'll see you in a minute. Hey, do you hear that? That's the water, which is really boiling. So now we're going to take the water and make sure that you have an adult that helps you with this. And bring it over here to the bowl and start pouring it in while mixing. Let's see if I can do this so you can actually see. So you're pouring it and mixing at the same time, and it's really, really, really thin, gets thinner and thinner, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, all of a sudden, it gets thick. That's the second magic trick. And then stir that up really good. This is actually pretty good. You could leave it just like this, but I'm going to add a little bit more in. I like adding the hot water, but at this point, you could actually use cold water. Be careful. The water is very hot, and it can hurt you. Thank you, water. Thank you, steam. Thank you, cornstarch. Okay. Now, I'm going to let this cool down. Thank you. And thank you to Liz, who's actually now holding okay. In thinking about making a mask, you got to think that you're going to wear it and that your whole body is going to contribute to being the robin. So just for 1 second, think about your most amazing body. Think about your head, how your head can turn this way and that way and this way, up and down and move. Sort of like a bird, right? And if we can make it so that we can use that movement, how great it would be. And then your arms, the breath coming up this way, like wings of a bird. Oh, how beautiful that is as well, right? Breathing like that. And then how do you get the shape, the beautiful shape of the beak coming? So I looked at the picture. I like to look at pictures of the real birds and go, oh, okay, I'm not going to try to make it be realistic, obviously, because the birds, why try to make a real bird? The birds are beautiful. I'm just going to make something so I can honor robin. So I made a sketch. I made a sketch with a big shape, thinking about that I'm going to be looking out of a spot about there. And if so, the beak is probably going to be coming way bigger up here. Okay, just going to keep that in mind as we work. So we're going to start with a brown paper bag. Now, not all brown paper bags are the same size. These co-op ones are a little bit bigger than the ones from, like, this is from Trader Joe's. Just a little bit smaller. See that? Yeah. So I chose this one. I dug in my pile and I have this old one. It's a little bit smaller. I have another one that I made already that's a little bit bigger. I'm going to show you with this one. So we're going to open up a bag. By the way, you could use a plastic bag. Some people like working with plastic. I sometimes work with plastic. But you know what? Do you know what plastic's made out of? Plastic's made out of oil. And I'm trying to use way, way, way less plastic because I don't like what the oil industries are doing to the water and to the communities that it goes through. So I think, okay, it's maybe better to use everything that can just go back into the land once it's done. All right, so here's brown paper bag. Does that look like a bird? No. So here's what we need to do. First thing is I'm making a rim out of cardboard just to give it a little structure. So you can use either a knife or scissors. Because this is so soft, it's easy to use the scissors and just cut a piece like this. This bends so easily, and put it into the bag, thinking about how big you want this opening to be. I made it a little bit smaller so that the head comes out in a little bit of a balloon shape, but definitely goes all the way on my head. If you have a smaller person, you might want to make this even smaller. And you can do that just by bending the paper in and making this smaller. I used my stapler to staple this in. Easy. If you don't have a stapler, you can use a little glob of glue in there and then tape it in place. Or you could hold it in place maybe with paper clip in the meantime, but I bet you have maybe some kind of stapler you could use or borrow one. Okay, then once you have this, you're going to make a bouquet. A bouquet, what is that? So take this, poke it down, and grab a hold of it with the hand that's inside there. Pulling up and poking down. So you're rounding it, and I'm calling it a bouquet because on the inside I am now holding on to, let's see, how do I do this so you can see? I'm actually holding on to the shape. It's like I'm holding on to a bunch of the stems. Okay? Poking that around, making it look a little bit rounded. When you think you have it approximately how you like it, you can stand back and look at it for a minute. Give it an extra squeeze inside here. You understand what I'm doing, right? There's a glob. I'm holding on to it. It's like an umbrella. Whew. Okay. And then take some tape and just wrap it around that in there, just to hold it. Okay, that still looks pretty funky. So now you can just like poke it around, try to make it round it out a little bit. There you go. Now it's very lightweight, but if you try to paper mache on this, it's going to all collapse. So this is where the newspaper comes in. Take some newspaper and open it up, knot it up, and put it in. Stuff this with newspaper. Okay, now one of the things I like about this, and it's true with the paper mache too, is that all of these stories of the current day are going into this work. It's like we are always in relationship to everything else that's happening. Some really beautiful things. Look, these pictures of butterfly that my friend Chris Luter made. They're at the Mall of America. Here's some people, the sports section. And then all the news about the virus and all the people who are working to keep people safe with all the ideas of what we can do, which is part of why I'm doing this online instead of having you stand right here, right next to me. Okay, look at this. Look at that beautiful picture of that owl. Yep. Ah, you know what? I'm going to save that picture. Oh, here we go. You get the idea, right? Guess what? It's snowing outside again. Can you see that? It's snowing, and it's the middle of April. Okay, we're going to continue on in here, making robins, welcoming back the birds. Right, here's this bag, stuffed. Now, it takes quite a bit of paper, but you don't want it to be real stuffy because you want to still be able to meld it. All right, then take some tape and just put a few pieces like this just so that the paper doesn't fall out as you move it around. Yeah, maybe kind of making a star pattern across. There you go. All right. Now all of this paper that's in here is where your head is going to go eventually. All right, now let's see how this shape is up here. This particular tape that I have is pretty frustrating. It just keeps popping off. Maybe your tape is frustrating too, but you know what? It only needs to hold it there for a little bit. Give it a good squeeze. All right. I'm going to take some across the top. I'll explain later what that's about. In fact, I'm going to stop doing that right now. Okay. Now comes the hardest part of this whole project. It's not even that hard, but you might want to fuss with it a little bit, and that is making the beak. So for the beak, cut a piece of cardboard that's about, I don't know, it's like 9 inches. I know that my arm from right here to here is 9 inches. So like 9.5 inches by 11 inches. And then this is going to be the beak. So on one end, take and cut from the center 2 lines. So you have a flap like that. And then down here, make a cut. I don't know, not halfway, but just into there. That's because you're going to bend it over each other. And then on the place where you have this line, cut a little away. You don't want to cut too much away because this is going to be folded, rolled in, and it'll add some strength. Now here's where you wish that you had like 16 hands to help you, but your 2 good hands is what you have. So what I always do is like, okay, I'm going to get some tape ready. Sometimes you can put tape like hanging on the table that can be there for you. I always put it also on myself because then it's right there, right when you need it, okay? All right, here we go. You ready? Now, I'm going to take this. I'm going to start by making the beak part. Bending it. If you have stiffer cardboard, you know, you could also use lightweight cardboard that's from a cereal box. Sometimes that's good to use too. But you can take this and you can bend it on the edge of the table. Do you know what I mean? Okay. Then take this and start bend these 2 pieces over each other, and then hold on to that while you roll this in. Now, if you have a helper, maybe a brother or sister or another person that's in your house, an older person, you could ask them to hold something while you do this. Do you see how I have a point? Now I'm going to take this tape and I'm taping tight into there. Taping around. Okay. Now take a look at it. You want the shape to be a little bit bendy, like this. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just keep bending it in. Don't worry about it too much. If you need to change it, you can. Never fret. Don't fret. That doesn't help anything. Or you can always adjust it with pieces of crumpled paper later on. Paper's magic. Paper-mache's magic. I promise you. Okay, so see how I'm using my body to help hold it as well? And then the tape, taping this awkward thing together like this, like this, like this. Okay, now I'm going to work on the other end here. Where you made those cuts, you're also going to want to take and slice toward the center. Do you see how I made that shape? Okay. Now take a look at this and think about, where is the front of the face? Does it matter? I'm going to do it this way. Right here. Can you see that? Okay. Now, put some tape there to hold that in place. take a look at it. Is that the way? I don't know. I might go back and look for a minute at a picture. Yeah, I think that's starting to look okay. All right, but you know what I forgot to do is get tape on my face. So now I've got to try to figure out how to hold that in place while I get some tape. All right, now I'm going to use the tape to go all the way around. See how you have this kind of open space here? I'm going to, you can either do this, you can either take some of these pieces that you cut off and tape them in place like that, which, that's probably a good idea. Or you can just use the tape stretched across like that. Okay, what you're doing is sculpting. You're sculpting with tape. Okay. Okay. Now we're getting ready for the paper-mache, the first part of the paper-mache. So I'm going to take the tape and I'm going to stretch it across the top that looks so bumpy like that, only so that the paper-mache has a resting place. But I'm going to teach you how to do that too, because the first layer of paper-mache in this kind of puppet making with paper bags and tape is a sculpting layer. Now, I have a friend, her name is Lindsay, who just goes wild with the tape. And she does so much tape that it is like she's resculpting with the tape. I'm a little bit more like, ooh, I want to use the paper when I have the paper. But both ways are fine. Can you see how that's making that shape smoothing out a little bit? Can you see the bird? No. Can you see how it's going to be? You can start seeing how it's going to move already. So now I have that one, and I also have a bigger one over here that I made to figure out how to make it. So we have two. Okay, here we go. We get to do some paper-mache now. Do you remember this bowl we made? Look how it's gotten thicker. So I'm going to stir it a little bit. And I like to keep a glass of water nearby. I'm going to add a little bit in, especially for this first part, where I'm actually using a brush. Okay. All right. Now, I also prepare a board, which is just a piece of cardboard that I put some plastic on. I do that because I'm lazy, and so I make these pieces for the first couple layers that I do a couple layers at one time. I'm going to show you how to do that. So first of all, I took the newspaper. Here, I'll show you the newspaper. And you could use it in the big, laying it out like that, but I think it's easier to tear it just in a big half like that. Then you have a pile of these pieces, and find a brush. You can use your hand. I like to use the brush here. Sometimes I use my hand. You can wash the brush out. I like to keep one that I just have as my paper-mache brush, but you know. And then take some paste, start from the middle, and paint like a star across, then a star out like this. And then make sure that the entire paper has this paste on it. You want to make sure that it's wet, but you don't want it to look globby like that. No globs. Just get it really good and wet. Okay. And then take the next piece, which happens to be the comics, and lay it on top. Again, start from the middle and paste onto the edges. Go from the middle out so that you don't get crumples. Again, don't fret. If you get a crumple, don't worry about it. It's a very forgiving medium. Okay, now one more.
We're here to say hi.
Oh, good. You get to meet other members of this household here. Here's Molly the dog. Molly, come here, sweetheart. Come here. Over here. Come here. Come up. Come here. Okay, now you can't see her because she's, there you go. This is Molly. She's very, very interested in the cornstarch paste. See, here's another thing, is it's totally non-toxic. Okay, thank you, Molly. All right. Okay.
Thank you, Molly.
And then this is Liz. Liz, come and bend in here so people, do you see Liz has her coat on? Because, yep, snowing out.
It's snowing, yeah.
Liz was holding the camera for me when I was pouring the hot water in, and she might again, and she's always like, she's the model for me when I'm trying to figure out how something looks. She'll put everything on and move around the house. It's really great to have a Liz as a partner in your home.
Yeah, for sure. It's all fun, and have fun making masks.
Yeah. Liz is also an artist. She's made many, many things out of paper-mache. She's a beautiful artist.
A few things.
Okay. So here I am, back again. This is the third layer. Oh, and this one has a bunch of crumples. But you know what? I'm not going to fret, even though I just did. All right. And then when you have this last one, pick the whole thing up and flip it over. And then get this side that was the bottom. And this is the exciting moment when you get to start paper-macheing. When you start, it's fun. And after you've been doing it for a while, you go, is this ever going to end? And then at the end, it's fun again. Okay, so here's the head. Now, this is pretty fragile, actually. So you can't push hard on it. Like, sometimes I use clay to make the forms. When you have a clay mask, then you can push really hard. But when you have just paper like this, for this first layer, you need to be a little bit gentle. So take and tear the paper. Don't get clever and think, okay, I'm going to cut it. Because the paper has these tiny little fibers. And it's these tiny little fibers that like to grab a hold of each other and make it strong. Now, this is fairly simple shape, so you can use fairly big pieces. And I'm going to lay this on pretty gently. On the places that I know I can press harder, I will, and otherwise I'm going to pull it over, and then the next one is going to go on top of it in that same way, pushing down. And sometimes I'll use a little bit of the paste at the edges just to make sure. And so it's like now you have these strips that you're going to cover the whole thing with. All right. Make sure that you get the pieces adhering to each other. So even though I'm not pushing very hard, I'm making them love each other. They're going to be friends forever in this mask. You think, how can paper, just these pieces of paper and paste, make something strong enough for a mask? It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Now look at this, is a much smaller piece. Can you see that? Okay, laying that in, covering up every single place. When you're going to go from one shape to another, sometimes I'll use even smaller pieces. And I like to make sure that some of it is here and some of it is here, almost like tape, almost as if it's tape. Okay. Paper macheing is a wonderful activity to share with other people. When you're able to be together in a room, when you're not social distancing, you can sit around and share stories about your lives, tell jokes, talk about the news of the day, gossip a little or whatever. Now, maybe you can do the same if you know someone else who's making a mask. You can Zoom each other and have a little Zoom party paper macheing. You know, my birthday was a couple weeks ago during the social distancing. And so my family arranged for a Zoom birthday party. Well, you're probably all discovering that. For me, it was a new thing. It was kind of fun. All right. Maybe you can get the idea of this. If something is too bumpy, the solution is make a smaller piece. Okay, and make sure that you like in a place like this where the paper goes in, I'm going to take these pieces and go across, 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 and now I've made that shape. Okay, so it's like the paper itself is sculpting now. All right. It's a little bit bumpy, but that's the style of these bag heads. Okay, I'm going to do just a little more. Then I'm going to turn this off and you'll see the completed newspaper head. Thought of a couple things I wanted to mention. One is, this is kind of messy. You might want to put on an apron or an old shirt or something that can be enhanced by the art project, right? Enhanced by paint, enhanced by paper mache. The other thing is that we're using 3 layers of this paper, and I'm showing you, let me see, 3 layers, and we're tearing the pieces the size it needs to be, but what does that mean? You don't want the pieces to be too terribly big. In some spaces, like here, where you have a big space, you can use pieces that are a little bit bigger, and sometimes you want it to span over some areas. But then you're going to need some that are much smaller for some of the different smaller detail. Sometimes you can just use one layer of paper, which is what we're going to do with the brown paper in a minute, or even 2 layers of this kind. So like for instance, on this beak that I want to be nice and pointy, I'm going to use some very small pieces because I want it to be pointy. I don't want it to be globby, even like this big. Look at that. Let's see, where can I show you? I'm still learning how to use the camera lens here. Okay, that was just a little side light. When you've covered the whole thing in newspaper, then I want you to take brown paper bag. I have some over here that have already torn from carrying too much weight. So take the brown paper and tear it into some pieces. Again, tearing. Do not cut this paper. Remember what I told you? The fiber. And remember what this paper is made out of? The trees. Okay, then take paste in your hand now. And it's like massaging it. Or like as if you have suntan lotion. Then you should do the whole layer. I'm jumping to the quick here. I'm going to finish the whole newspaper layer before I start the brown paper. But then you're going to take the brown paper and you're going to cover the whole thing, piece by piece by piece. Now I'm using slightly smaller pieces and I'm overlapping some. You don't have to overlap a lot, but the overlap is what makes it good and strong. You're going to be amazed once you finish this layer how incredibly gorgeous your bird looks. Okay, see ya in a little bit. Hey, when you have all of your layers of paper done, then you're going to let it dry. You could, if you need to, you could let it dry after the 3 layers of newspaper. If you're paper-macheing with only 2 layers of paper, newspaper, then I wouldn't recommend it, but with 3 you can. The brown paper makes it really nice and strong. So this particular one here, the nose feels a little like it's bendy a little bit, so I'm going to prop it up like this and let it dry. Okay, overnight. See you later. Good morning. Here we go. We're going to finish the last bit of paper mache on the mask, and then in another whole video we'll do the painting and the wings and etc. So now this has dried. You can take away any supports that you had and just assess. Oh, yeah, great, pretty strong, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add some eyes onto the mask. I want to show you on the one, my test mask, I've been working so that I actually am a couple steps ahead just to give you a little idea about where we're going. Okay, so what we need for now is, first of all, I want you to lift this upside down and remember all of this that you put in. I'm going to cut that out, easy, and tear it, and take this paper, and what are we going to do with this paper? Maybe you want to save it for the next mask you make. I'm not sure, but you want to take the tape off so that you can then recycle the rest of it. Or save it, recycle it by saving it for the next one. So go ahead and take all of this paper out. Remember when you stuffed it. And there it is, the inside of the mask with this little nub that we called like an umbrella or a bouquet. All right. Now, in order to strengthen the mask, it's pretty strong. But we're going to take some paper and we're going to go over the edge. Okay, something that I didn't tell you about is, what do you do with the paste overnight? A lot of people think you need to cover it really solidly, but if you do that, it'll start to sour. So I always just put a very loose covering on it, just to protect it from dirt or the mice or whatever. Just a layer of newspaper or maybe a cloth or something like that that's breathable. So here's our paste again. And also remember when I told you that you only needed one brown paper bag? That was a lie, right? You've already used so many doing all of your brown paper on the mask. And now here we are. We're going to use it again for the strengthening layers. So get a little pile together. You're going to want some pieces that are a little bit bigger, like this. And then for the eyes, you're going to want some strips. Okay, so take some, get it good and wet, but again, not sloppy wet. Now, on the rim, put some that's on this side, and then bend it into the inside, all the way over that the cardboard rim that you put in there for strength, right? And then do the next one, and you've probably got it. You're expert paper-macheer by now. I just know that for sure. And bend it in until you've gone all the way around. Now, I'm not going to do that because that's kind of boring to watch, right? But that's what you need to do. I'm going to now show you how to do the eyes. Okay, so crumpled paper. We're going to take a crumple of paper and paper mache it onto there. So the first thing is to, my hands are wet from that. Prepare some tape. You guys know what this is about, right? Here, or if you don't like putting it on your face, you can put it on the table. All right. My face is a little, I put lotion on, so it's a little less sticky. Okay, and then take this piece of paper and tear it, so now you have maybe a fourth of what that was. Have you noticed that it tears really easily in one direction and not in the other? Kind of interesting, isn't it? It's like it's fabric, right? All right, now take this and crumple it so that you're folding it into the middle. So you have a shape that looks sort of like that. And think about, where is this going to go? Place it on. This also is another time when you might want to say, hey, can you help me for a minute by holding something? And then put the tape on. Make sure that the tape bends down into the shape of this eye. Again, sort of a star pattern. Okay. Now the thing about the eyes, I always say that when I make a mask, I spend as much time on the eyes as I do on the whole other rest of the mask. That's because eyes are super important. You know how your own eyes let people know when you're happy or sad, when you see the world? Also, when you're wearing a mask, it's where the eyes are that direct the attention of the figure. So you want to make sure that these eyes are going to work for you. And something like a bird, it's like I keep studying the pictures of the birds. And in some ways, their eyes are like here on the sides of the head. But we know that we also want to see the mask from the front. So you need to maybe cheat a little bit where you make it so that when you're looking at the mask, you can see it well from the front, but also from the side. Okay, so I'm going to show you on this one. I worked for a while to figure out that the eyes that they read from the front as well as from the side. Okay. Does it make some sense? Does that make sense? Then when you have this done, do the other one and then look at it and say, oh, are these a pair of eyes? Maybe you want eyes that are a little bit different. It's okay. Our eyes actually are not exactly the same. And then take the strips of brown paper that are longer, so that they are like tape now, but more meldable. Make sure you get the paper wet enough so that it can bend easily. Sometimes people like to actually crumple that up. It's very sunny in this room today, so I can see that some things are washing out from the light. Okay, now I'm going to take this actually in half, which you might want to do before you get it wet. It's always easier to tear the paper when it's dry. And then place some down on the head and some over the eye. Now when you do this, make sure that you go on the edge of the eye so that the shape, the bump of the shape actually comes out and isn't lost because of how you papered it. Does that make some sense? All right, and then you just keep your expert paper machers by now. You know, another thing that I didn't mention is a lot of times the brown paper has things written on it. On these layers, make sure that that goes on the inside so that you have a nice clear layer with no writing as your mask dries. If you make a mistake and you have the words or the design on the outside, it's not a problem. You know what to do, right? Take another piece and put it on top of it. Unless, of course, you get really fancy and you go, hey, with these co-op ones in particular, they have this really fun kind of green polka dot pattern. Maybe you actually want that on your mask. Just saying. Maybe not the robins, but maybe you want to make other birds. Okay. So I think you understand what we're doing here, paper macheing. I'm doing one. Really, I would wait until I have the other eye before I would do it, but that's kind of boring to just watch me do it when you really want to be doing it, right? You've got the idea. I'm going to let you finish, and then we'll have a mask completely strong and ready so that we can start making it fit us with eye holes, and we'll start making the wings. Now here's a note. Yes, the eyes going on here with these extra layers here and this extra layer that's around the base coming up is actually really good for strengthening the mask so that you can wear it many, many, many times. Okay, happy birding. See you later.